Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about emotionally immature parents. There's a lot of content out there talking about emotional immaturity in relationships or emotionally immature partners. I don't think there's as much content out there talking about emotionally immature parents and how that can affect us even into adulthood. I did make a video on childhood emotional neglect or emotional childhood neglect. I sometimes get confused on what direction that term is supposed to be stated. But I made a video on that, and really that is the outcome of having emotionally immature parents. And these are parents that have a low level of emotional intelligence, meaning that they have a hard time connecting with their children emotionally. This is also called an avoidant dismissive attachment style, which is usually what these folks, they kind of fall under. And I do want to make a separate video entirely about avoidant attachment because I think that that is a really good complement to this video as well. So I'm going to talk about some signs that your parent is emotionally unintelligent or emotionally immature. The first sign is that you didn't feel like you could go to your parents with anything that was an emotionally charged issue, meaning that if you felt sad or hurt after school, you couldn't come and talk to them about it. If you tried to, your feelings were dismissed. And this ends up leading you to feel really emotionally lonely, meaning that emotionally you just felt on your own. They might have provided your physical needs, you might have always had a hot dinner, but when it came to addressing feelings, they weren't there for you. They didn't know what to do with your hurt feelings. If you experienced maybe your first heartbreak, they didn't know how to respond to that. Now, they might have told you what to do, but telling someone what to do is very different than validating how someone feels. So if you came to your parent because you were experiencing your first heartbreak and you wanted to talk to them about it, they might have said something like, oh, you just need to get over it, let that person go, they're not for you. Just forget about them. And that is very different than a parent that is more securely attached or has higher emotional intelligence, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, that sounds really hard, talk to me about that. So hopefully you can see the difference there. Get over it, let them go, move on is very different than like, that's really difficult. I remember my first heartbreak and that was hard. Why don't you tell me more about that? How are you feeling right now? Big difference. Number 2, interactions with them felt very one-sided. Sometimes you might have even felt like you were the person that needed to emotionally validate your parent. This is also really common in people that are raised by narcissists as well. I did make another video, separate video on narcissistic parents. I'll leave that link below if you want to view that video as well. But both emotionally unintelligent parents and narcissistic parents tend to be very, very one-sided when it comes to emotion. So they might expect you to take care of their emotional baggage, but they're not willing to help you take care of yours. And sometimes you just might feel outright dismissed, like you come to share something that's very important to you, and they just outright dismiss it, or they change the subject or the topic. In the end, you don't feel like they're actually hearing you. Number 3, they struggle with emotional intimacy, meaning that your parents had a really hard time being vulnerable around you. Emotions in the house were often dismissed. They weren't acknowledged. Deeper feelings and deeper conversations were avoided, and instead a lot of the conversations were very superficial and surface-based. So they might have avoided actually telling you how they feel about you. They might not say that they loved you. They might not have shared those tender moments with you that tend to occur in more secure parent-child relationships. And in fact, the only time that intense emotion was really displayed in the home was when dealing with things like complaining or anger or fighting, more negativistic emotions. But as I've talked about more in my emotion videos, we know anger is a secondary emotion. So when someone's angry, it's usually something existing underneath the surface. In emotionally immature households, that deeper level below the surface is not explored. It's just the anger. And then you might feel more compelled to comfort your parent, and your parent might grow to expect this from you, to comfort them when they're upset and angry, and then they don't return the favor. They aren't able to do that. Number 4, your parents expect you to guess how they feel. In family systems research, there's this term called enmeshment. And what enmeshment is when the feelings and emotions, usually in the situation of the parent, become enmeshed with their children. So if the parent is feeling upset and angry, then the child feels like they also need to be upset and angry. So we have this emotional enmeshment happening. And a lot of time this is done by crossing boundaries. And when your parent is upset, they have no problem crossing your boundaries to also make you upset as well. A lot of the times people will say that they felt like they had to guess what their parents were feeling without them saying anything about how they were feeling. And if they weren't able to guess correctly or they didn't acknowledge how they were feeling, they were made to feel guilty about that. They expect you to know what they want without the communication skills of telling you what it is that they want. And then they instill the guilt, saying something along the lines of, well, if you really loved or cared about me, then you would know. They expect full attunement of their emotions at all times. And if they aren't attuned to their emotions, then you are made to feel guilty, which elicits feelings of shame within inside of yourself. And again, I want to add that this is also a very common characteristic that is seen in narcissistic parents as well. Narcissistic parents really like to elicit feelings of shame and guilt in their children. And they often do this by being like, well, if you really cared or loved me, then you would have known this. You would have known to do this or known to say this. You aren't expected to know anything about anyone. And that really should never be an expectation. You should never be expected to know how someone else is feeling. The next sign is that you feel that you need to do the emotional work in the relationship. Similar to what I talked about earlier, you're the one that is meeting your parents' emotional needs and not the other way around. And this can often look like when a conflict arises, you feel the need to have to apologize. Like you're always the one that's apologizing. You're always the one that is comforting your parents and making them feel better. The repairs are on you. Reconnection is on you. They tend to shut down and not address an issue. If it is going to be addressed and reconciled, you're the one that has to initiate that. I hope this video was helpful with offering a little bit more insight into emotionally immature parents. If you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. I would love to see you in the next